Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivara Dadi Gopi Jana Balaba Girivara Dadi Gopi Jana Balaba Girivara Dadi Gopi Jana Balaba Jasodhanandana Brajajanarandana Nandana Brajajanarandana Jasodhanandana Brajajanarandana Nandana Brajajanarandana Jamanatira Chadi Vanacha Jamana Tira Vana Chadi Nanatira Vanacha Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Adi Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Adi Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Adi Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dadi 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 Jasodhanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodhanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tira Vana Chadi Jamuna Tira Vana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Adi Jaya Madhava Punjabi Adi Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajacharya Astatarasatasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya We're going to conclude this evening with the final section of Kishkinda. is the name of the place. Kishkinda is the name of the place where the monkey warriors, the Vanaras, lived. Vali and Sugriva and all of them. And tomorrow evening we'll start the next Kanda, Sundara Kanda. In the course of the reading yesterday, where Vali and Sugriva were doing combat and Ram didn't fire his arrow, and Sugriva wanted to know why. If you had no intention, why did you even? I never would have gone to fight with Bali. He's powerful. There was a trick. One of the tricks is Vali who was the father of Vali? His father was? Who was the father of Sugriva? They're brothers. They had the same mother, but they had different fathers. Indra. Indra had given a special gift or a charm to Vali. It was a golden necklace. And two things. The golden necklace had the power, whenever Vali was fighting, it's very clever. Whoever Vali was fighting, half of the power of the other person would go to him. So there was his power against another person's power, but the other person's power was divided into half, would come to him. So it's 50-50 in terms of power. And then whatever power Bali had made it, he would win. Boys. Boys will be boys, I guess. So it was a very clever arrangement that guaranteed Vali would win. So when Vali was fighting with Sugriva, there seems like equal combat, but then Vali prevailed, and Sugriva ran for his life. So Sugriva asked, "Why didn't you kill him? Why you said you would do this?" What did Ram say? Ram said, "I couldn't tell the difference between the two of you. I didn't want to shoot the arrow and hit the wrong one." That's what he said. But later, in the commentaries of our acharyas, it said he wanted some special way of recognizing who Sugriva was. So he told Lakshman, get a vine and make it into a garland, give him the garland, and then we can know who's who. So the commentators say that what Ram really wanted was, in order to receive the garland, he had to bow his head down before Lakshman, because he had made a previous offense. Sugriva made a previous offense against Lakshman, and that's problematic. So the offense was, when they first made their friendship, Sugriva, after the friendship, Sugriva took some boughs from some trees and placed them on the ground for Ram to sit on and he to sit on, and didn't do anything, didn't offer the same honor to Lakshman. That's an offense. Hospitality between two lords is to be extended to both of them, not only one. There's similar pastime like this in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, where honor was given to him, but not to Lord Nityananda, and he considered that offense. So as Balaram is to Krishna, so Lakshman is to Ram. his first expansion. And honor is to be given to Balaram as much as to Krishna. Honor is to be given as much to Lakshman as to Ram, but he didn't. So in order for him to bow before Lakshman, he had him receive a garland. I mean, it was a gesture of honoring him, giving him a garland, but he had to bow to receive the garland. So somebody asked a question at the end of yesterday's class. This looks like an untruth. If Ram's real purpose was he wanted him to make amends for his offense to Lakshman by bowing before Lakshman before he would then slay Bali, why did he say, I couldn't tell the difference between the two? And Ram never speaks an untruth. So how to understand that? And so I'm now reporting a little research. One, I gave an answer. We'll speak about that also. But one acharya said, when he said, I couldn't tell the difference between the two of you, it was a look-alike, but it was also, Vali was an offender and you're an offender, so I can't tell the difference between the two of you. And thus I want to remove the offense by your bowing before Lakshman. That was one explanation. Another explanation that somebody did a reminder, I had, when we discussed this during our visit to the Dandak forest and Kishkinda, the explanation I gave when this same question came, this was several years ago, the answer, someone remembered, I didn't even remember, was this is one of those enigmatic statements that hardly anyone can understand. It's just there are some statements like that. And some examples, scriptural examples, are when the personality of Godhead, Narayana, came before the gates of Vaikuntha when the four Kumaras were offended by giant Vijay. And he spoke some words that were very puzzling. They were puzzling to the four Kumaras. And he said, it's I who have offended you. You know, they're my servants, but when the servant offends, it's the master who is the offender. So I take the responsibility for the offense. And they were puzzled. And one can ponder on that and come up with different understandings as you ponder on that, and still not reach an end to it. There are some statements like that in Scripture. Or another general explanation is from Bhagavad Gita. It was spoken thousands of years ago, and scholars again and again and again and again and again and again and again ponder it, examine it, and have they reached the full depth of the understanding of Bhagavad Gita. So like that, there are some statements it's hard to discern. And there's a third possible explanation that I mentioned the other evening, and that is, although he only mentioned I couldn't tell the difference between the two of them physically, it could be that there was a second reason. He just didn't mention the second reason in addition to the first reason. Now, sometimes, so duplicity is you're purposefully concealing something. And in other circumstances, you're not telling a half-truth deliberately to deceive somebody. You're just giving one of the valid reasons of multiple reasons. It's not an untruth if you don't list, 6 things that are factors in making decisions that you make. You may mention one, not necessarily 2 or 5 or 6. That's a possibility. Both are factors. And so it wasn't an untruth on that basis. And it's important, although it's a little hair-splitting, it's important because so much of the Ramayana is resting upon the virtue of, so much of Ramayana is building the importance of virtue. And of the virtues, the most important virtue is abiding by truth. So speaking an untruth turns out to be a big deal. In modern, dealings, people do what they do. But Vedic culture, spiritual life, Brahminical life and spiritual life, both, truth is of utmost importance. So, therefore the question, therefore spending the extra time on the topic. Now, if his meaning was, you're a offender just as Valmi is an offender, so I don't see the distinction between the two. Why didn't he say that? Instead, I couldn't tell the difference between the two because, anyway, one can go on and on and on and on about it. So here we go. We're going to search for Sita. And that's the title of this chapter. The search for Sita begins. Ram and Lakshman moved to the nearby Prashravana, that's a mountain's name, and sought out a large cave close to its summit. They settled in, spending their time talking together and performing sacrifice. But Ram's mind rarely left Sita. His only consolation was to describe her qualities to Lakshmana. He longed for the rainy season to end so that he could search for his beloved wife. Gradually, the rain subsided. The sky cleared, and the resonant cries of cranes filled the air. Although the monsoons were over, however, Sugriva still did not prepare his army to search for Sita. Realizing this, Ram discussed the situation with Lakshmana. It seems the Vanara king has forgotten his debt to us, O noble brother. Why have his messengers not arrived here with news of their search? O Lakshmana, I fear that the gentle Sita is lost forever. What is she doing now? Surely her mind dwells on me, even as mine never leaves her. Surely she weeps in agony, even as I weep here. Ram's grief was strong, as strong as it had been when Sita was abducted 4 months ago. Ram felt powerless. He was still no closer to finding Sita than the day she was kidnapped. And now Sugriva, upon whom his hopes were resting, was letting him down. Ram sat distracted by sorrow. This was another question that came the other evening. This secondary rasa of sorrow. Primary and secondary rasas. You're familiar a little bit with that topic? No? Okay. Rupa Goswami, follower of Lord Chaitanya, wrote a book on rasa, Bhakti Rasa, Amrita Sindhu, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which became Prabhupada's nectar of devotion. In that book, one of the topics is the relationships with Krishna, the rasa of those relationships with Krishna, and there's 5 primary ones, and there's 7 secondary ones, making 12. The function of the secondary ones is to nourish the primary ones. So the primary ones are the primary ones. And they go in sequence: neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. They're Sanskrit names. Neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parental affection, conjugal love. 5 primary. And then the 7 secondary rasas, they kind of like spike and amplify and seem to eclipse the primary rasa, but it's actually just nourishing the primary rasa. So one of those secondary rasas is the secondary rasa of karuna. And one of the translations, there's different meanings, but one of them is sorrow. And how much sorrow is there in the whole of the Ramayana? Too much. But the presiding deity of Karuna Rasa is Ram. And it's right from the very beginning when Valmiki composes Ramayana with sorrow, seeing the Krancha bird being pierced by the arrow of Ram, by the arrow of the hunter. Sorrow, and then it's so Ram is. Others were feeling sorrow when he had to leave, and then the sorrow in his separation, and now he's feeling sorrow in being separated from Sita. It's increasing, it's nourishing the primary rasa, the conjugal love between Sita and Ram, husband and wife. And there's a section taken directly from Rupa Goswami's writings that explains who is the presiding deity of each of the 12. I'll leave it with you so you can look at it later rather than reading it. Ram sat distracted by sorrow. Lakshmana reassured him. This is not the time to grieve, dear brother. We must strenuously exert ourselves to find Sita. With you as her protector, no one can hold the princess for long. Compose yourself, Ram. Let us do what must be done. Ram sighed and looked around. On a plateau beneath his cave, a large pond had formed by the rains. Swans and cranes sported joyfully in the water among clusters of white and red lotuses. Ram could hear the croaks of frogs and the cries of peacocks. In the distance he heard the trumpeting sound of elephants in the rut. Large black bees droned around the bright forest flowers, intoxicated with nectar. The sky was a deep blue, and the forest flowers and the wind, which had blown fiercely during the monsoons, had become a gentle breeze. The sights and sounds of autumn were visible everywhere. Ram was reflective. Where was Sugriva? Had he forgotten his promise now that his own problem had been solved? How could he be so ungrateful? Ram's brow furrowed with anger. That's another one of the secondary rasas. Nrsingadev is the lord of that one. And he turned to Lakshman. These past 4 months have seemed like 100 years from me. I have longed for the end of the rains, O Lakshman, so that we might find Sita, as we agreed with Sugriva. Although I have rendered him great favor, the evil-minded Monkey King obviously holds me in contempt. Seeing me forlorn and deprived of my kingdom, living helplessly like an ascetic in the forest, the wicked fellow entirely disregards me. Ram told Lakshman to go to Kishkinda. He should tell Sugriva that there is no viler being than one who is ungrateful. So these are moral lessons, very important ones. Had he forgotten the favor Ram had done for him and the promise he had made in return? Did he wish to again see Ram's golden bow drawn to its full length? Did he desire to see Ram angry on the battlefield? Did he long to hear again the crash of Ram's bowstring, sounding like so many claps of thunder? It was strange that Sugriva seemed to have forgotten how Vali had slain by a single arrow from Ram. Vali was slain by a single arrow from Ram, although Sugriva himself could never overcome his brother. Ram's eyes were crimson with anger as he spoke. It is clear that Sugriva is lost in sensual pleasures, having regained his kingdom after a long time. Drunk and surrounded by women, he has all but forgotten his pledged word to me. Tell him, O brother, that the path taken by Vali still lies open. Along with all his kinsmen, Sugriva may proceed along that path if he does not care for his promise. He should take heed of this warning. Otherwise, he will meet again soon with Vali. Anger. Lakshman himself became furious as he listened to Ram. He told Ram that he would go immediately to Kishkinda. With upraised weapons, he would dispatch Sugriva to death's abode. Clearly, the licentious and unvirtuous Sugriva was not fit to rule a kingdom. Angada should be installed as a king, and he would organize the search for Sita. Sugriva should be punished without delay. He's quick. Lakshmana stood up and searched for his weapons. Ram, whose anger had already begun to subside, then checked his brother. I think it is not fitting that you kill Sugriva. Try it at first to pursue a gentler path. Remind him of our friendship and his promise, O Lakshman. Do not use harsh words immediately. After all, Sugriva is but a monkey. Perhaps you can awaken him to a sense of his duty by conciliatory speech. Lakshman bowed in assent to Ram's words. Although he could not subdue his anger, he left the cave and began running towards Kishkinda, thinking of what he would say to Sugriva. He could not disobey Ram's order, but he would not tolerate any resistance from Sugriva. If that lazy monkey did not immediately set about his duty, he would be sorry. How dare he be so negligent of his promise to Ram? Who did he think he was? Lakshman bit his lips in fury as he bounded down the mountainside. Now he's in Kishkinda. In the city of Kishkinda, Hanuman had already noticed the season change and Sugriva not stirring. The intelligent minister thought carefully about the situation. Ram would certainly take stern action if Sugriva failed to fulfill his pledge. Hanuman approached the Vanara king, who was absorbed in sensuality, and spoke to him in a friendly and pleasing manner. You have regained sovereignty, fame, and prosperity, O Sugriva. It now remains for you to win the goodwill of your allies. The dominance, fame, and glory of a king who acts well towards his allies will always grow. That king who regards equally his exchequer, his army, his allies, and his own self will gain a great kingdom. And that's a British term, exchequer. What does that mean? Look it up in your Google Guru. Exchequer. Related to finance. Treasurer. Okay. Thank you. However, he who fails to take care of any one of these meets with disaster. Hanuman then reminded Sugriva of his promise to Ram. The time had arrived to begin the search for Sita. The king should immediately send out monkeys in all directions. Ram should not need to ask. It would be shameful if Sugriva did not act quickly to repay a debt to his friend and ally. Sugriva thanked Hanuman for his wise and timely advice. The monkey king realized his laxity, and he immediately summoned his ministers and counselors. He issued orders. Let all the Vanara generals be quickly assembled. Swift-footed and energetic monkeys are needed. 10,000 of my army should immediately depart for every country where the Vanaras dwell. Have them fetch the very best of the monkey warriors here to Kishkinda. Anyone sent out and failing to return within 15 days should be executed. Wow. Ordering Hanuman and Angada to organize the army, Sugriva again returned to his rooms. Within a few days, the monkey hordes began to assemble outside the city. Monkeys resembling elephants, mountains, and clouds gathered together. Those powerful Vanaras were like mighty tigers and were all heroic. They were dark and terrible, and they made one's hair stand erect just to see them. Some were as strong as 100 elephants, some 10 times stronger than that, and others 10 times stronger again. They stood waiting Sugriva's order. As the monkeys milled about in their tens of thousands outside Kishkinda, They noticed Lakshmana approaching in the distance. When they saw the prince running towards the city, his face glowing with anger and his bow grasped tightly, they became fearful. Some of them, not recognizing him, lifted up trees and boulders ready to defend Kishkinda. Others ran in all directions. As Lakshmana arrived near the city gates, holding aloft his bow and calling for Sugriva. Seeing the monkeys preparing to attack him, Lakshmana became even more angry. He heaved deep and burning sighs and licking the corners of his mouth. Angada came quickly out of the city, checking the monkeys from fleeing, went before Lakshmana. Ram's brother appeared to the monkey prince like a blazing fire of universal destruction. In great fear, he bowed low at Lakshman's feet and greeted him respectfully. Although furious, Lakshman contained his anger and spoke kindly to Angada. Pray tell, Sugriva, of my arrival, dear child. I stand here tormented by grief due to Ram's plight. Please ask the king to hear from me Ram's advice. Angada bowed again and left swiftly, running to Sugriva. He burst into his chambers and told her to come quickly, but Sugriva was asleep, groggy from the night's pleasures. He lay upon his bed with only garlands as his dress. As he slowly stirred, many more monkeys came near his room, raising a great clamor. They were terrified of the wrathful Lakshman. Sugriva heard the tumult and came to his senses. He stood up, troubled in mind, and Angada explained the situation. Sugriva told Angada to bring Lakshman immediately. Why have you left him standing at the gates? He demanded. He should be offered every respect, even as much as myself. Angada, joined by Hanuman, quickly left to fetch Lakshmana. Within a few minutes, Lakshmana was led into Kishkinda by Angada and Hanuman. Still fuming, the prince surveyed the city. Great mansions and temples lined the wide avenues, each building set with celestial jewels of every description. The city was illuminated by the jewels' glow. Rivulets flowed by the avenues, and groves of trees were here and there, yielding all kinds of delightful fruits. As he went along the main highway, Lakshmana saw the large white palaces of the chief monkeys. They shone like clouds, lit by the sun. Long wreaths of flowers hung from those palaces, and the scent of aloe and sandalwood issued from the latticed windows. He's a good writer. That's Kishkinda. Lakshmana was led into Sugriva's palace, the most magnificent of all. After passing through 7 heavily guarded gates, he entered Sugriva's inner chambers. Here and there were numerous gold and silver couches spread with costly silk covers. Many beautiful Vanara ladies wearing garlands and gold ornaments moved about, their anklets tinkling. As they reached Sugriva's private chambers, Lakshmana heard the strains of celestial music from within. He became even more annoyed with Sugriva. The insolent monkey was reveling while Ram was suffering in agony. Lakshman twanged his bowstring, and the sound reverberated through the entire palace. Sugriva was startled. Realizing at once that Lakshman had arrived, he spoke urgently to Tara, who sat by his side. Go quickly and greet Lakshmana. He'll never display anger in the presence of a woman. Very clever. Pacify him with gentle words, only then will I be able to face him. Tara rose up and went out of the room. The gold string of her girdle hung loose as she tottered slightly from intoxication. Bending her slender body low, she covered her head with her cloth and respectfully greeted Lakshmana. As soon as he saw Tara, Lakshmana looked down modestly. His anger abated as Tara spoke gently. My lord, what gives rise to your angry mood? Who has disobeyed your order? Who has recklessly gone before a forest fire while it rushed towards a thicket of dry trees? Still annoyed, Lakshman replied, "This husband of yours appears to have forgotten his duty. He seems intent only on pursuing pleasures. 4 months have already passed since Ram left, and we still see no signs of Sugriva keeping his word. He remains drunk here, enjoying with you and unaware of the passage of time. O Tara, drinking is always condemned by the wise as the root of irreligion. Please remind Sugriva of his religious obligation." Tara begged Lakshmana to forgive Sugriva. After all, he was but a monkey. It was no surprise he had fallen a victim to lust. Even great sages in the forest were sometimes overcome by desire. What then of a monkey living among beautiful women? One, under the sway of carnal desire, loses all sense of time and place. Forgetting his duty, he casts decorum to the winds and absorbs himself in pleasure. Tara told Lakshman that Sugriva was regretful. He was always Ram's devoted servant, and he longed to fulfill Ram's order. Even now he was waiting eagerly to speak with Lakshman. Tara led Lakshman into Sugriva's chamber. As the prince entered the apartment, he saw Sugriva seated on a golden couch next to his wife, Ruma, second wife, actually his real wife. He was surrounded by youthful Vanara ladies, adorned with shining jewels and heavenly garlands. His eyes were bloodshot, and his limbs were smeared with sandal paste. Sugriva's costly silk garment hung loose on his powerful body, and Vali's brilliant gold chain shone from his chest. Remember the gold chain that Indra had given him? I'm checking your son to make sure he's... The gold chain that Indra gave to Vali was then given later to his brother, Sugriva. Sugriva's wearing this, spectacular, heavenly... It's not just a nice necklace. It's protecting. Seeing Sugriva absorbed in sensual delights, Lakshman's anger was rekindled. His eyes opened wide, and his lips set in a firm line. The furious prince breathed heavily and wrung his hands, looking with blood-red eyes at Sugriva. The monkeykin jumped from his couch like a tall flag suddenly raised in honor of Indra. He went before Lakshmana with folded palms and bowed at his feet. Lakshmana addressed him in angry tones. "Who is more hard-hearted than he who makes a false promise to a friend, especially when that friend has done him a great favor, O Lord of the monkeys? One who ungratefully fails to repay the service of friends deserves to be killed." It's a veiled threat. Lakshmana forgot Ram's request to first speak kindly to Sugriva. He glared at him. This selfish monkey deserved no pity. He lay here at ease while Ram was pining away. Lakshman vented his fury, his voice thundering about Sugriva's spacious chamber. "Ingratitude is the worst of all sins, O thoughtless one. You are lustful and a liar. You have achieved your own ends, made some empty promise, and then simply abandoned yourself to pleasure. Surely you will regret your omissions when Ram's blazing arrows speed towards you. Before long you will meet with Vali again." He was supposed to speak nicely. Tara again beseeched Lakshman to be patient. Sugriva was an ordinary being subject to the sway of his senses. No one could easily avert the strong urges of the body. Even the great Vishwamitra had once lost himself in sexual pleasure for 100 years, thinking it to be a day. Sugriva had now been awakened to his duty. He had taken action and sent out many monkeys to raise an army to find Sita. Tara spoke passionately to the angry Lakshmana. "Vali told me," listen, this is his spy information, Vali told me there are 100 million powerful Rakshasas in Lanka. 100 million powerful Rakshasas in Lanka. These must be overcome if Ravana is to be defeated. Therefore, Sugriva is now amassing a force sufficient to encounter all the Rakshasas. The army will be ready within some days. Do not be angry. The search for Sita will begin soon. Lakshman was pacified when he heard that Sugriva had already made arrangements. He nodded his head and relaxed. Seeing Lakshman relaxing, Sugriva said, "Everything I have depends upon Ram. How can I ever repay him? Ram alone is powerful enough to recover Sita and is merely using me as his instrument. This again is his kindness to me. I only wish to serve him in whatever way I can. Please forgive any transgression on my part, for there was no servant who is without fault." Lakshman began to feel ashamed of his angry outburst. He spoke kindly to Sugriva. "With you as his supporter, my brother is blessed in every way, O gallant monkey. I feel sure he will soon destroy his enemy with your assistance. Please forgive my harsh words, for I am sorely afflicted by my brother's plight." Lakshman asked Sugriva to come with him to see Ram. Sugriva immediately had a large palanquin fetched, and he mounted it along with Lakshmana. Accompanied by Sugriva's ministers, they departed towards Prashravana. That's the mountain where they were staying for the 4 months. Prashravana. The golden palanquin covered with a white canopy was carried swiftly toward the mountain where Ram waited. Conches and kettle drums resounded as the procession of monkeys moved in state. Sugriva was surrounded by many warlike monkeys bearing weapons in their hands. He was fanned on both sides by his servants and eulogized by bards as they traveled. They soon arrived at Ram's cave. Sugriva jumped from the palanquin and prostrated himself at Ram's feet, who lifted the monkey and embraced him with love. Ram seated Sugriva on the ground and, sitting next to him, spoke in a gentle voice. "A wise king is he who pursues, in their proper order, religion, wealth, and pleasure, allotting proper time to each. He who pursues only pleasure, neglecting the other two, wakes up after falling, like when asleep on a treetop. The king who wins pious allies and destroys sinful ones gains great religious merit, O Sugriva. The time has come for you to make an effort for merit. What then has to be done, O king?" Sugriva replied that he was ever indebted to Ram for his kindness and favor. The Vanara king explained how he had dispatched thousands of monkeys to gather an army. Soon there will be millions of fierce monkeys, bears, and baboons gathering at Kishkinda. All of them were sprung from the loins of the gods and Gandharvas, and were all terrible warriors capable of changing their forms at will. Sugriva would have at his command a vast army, countless in number. They would quickly find Ravana, completely uproot him, and recover Sita. Ram was delighted, and he looked like a blue lotus in full bloom. He embraced Sugriva tightly. "It is no surprise that one of your caliber renders such good to his friends. With you by my side, I shall easily conquer my enemies, O Sugriva. You are my greatest well-wisher, and you are fit to help me in every way." Ram and Sugriva discussed for some time, planning how to make their search. Sugriva then left to meet his emissaries, who were returning with the troops they had gathered. As millions of fierce monkey warriors came to Kishkinda, the earth vibrated. A massive dust cloud rose up and veiled the sun. The trees shook, sending down showers of leaves and blossoms. The entire region for miles around became thickly populated by monkeys who looked like mountains. Some were golden-hued, like the rising sun. Some were as red as copper, and some blue as the sky. Others were as white as the moon, and still others were blackish as thunder clouds. All of them, like great mountain lions, had frightening teeth and claws. The troop leaders approached Sugriva and asked for his command. Sugriva took all of them and went again into Ram's presence. One by one, he introduced the Vanara chiefs, and they all bowed low at Ram's feet. Sugriva concluded, "These warriors are righteous, brave, and powerful. They can move on land, water, and through the air. They have conquered fatigue and are famous for their exploits. All of them have arrived, bringing thousands and millions of followers. O Ram, these Vanaras are ready to do your bidding. Please give your command." Ram stood up and embraced Sugriva. "It must be ascertained whether or not Sita still lives. O noble one, find out where Ravana's land is located. Once we have this information, we shall then do what is necessary." So it's three things. Where is Ravana's kingdom? Is Sita still alive? And then once we have that information, we'll do the next. Sugriva then assigned 4 parties to search for in the 4 directions. He gave detailed descriptions of the countries where they should look, and then added, the search should be conducted only over the next month. Then you should return. Anyone returning after a month will be subject to death. Ram and his great purpose should be constantly remembered by all of you. May success be yours. Now, something that's not here is Ram says, "How'd you know about the whole planet Earth?" And he said, "When Vali was chasing me, I went everywhere. So I noted everything everywhere. So I was able to describe everything everywhere." And that everywhere includes, this is a detail, it includes parts of Bhumandala that we can't see with our eyes. Bhumandala means that 7 islands with Sumeru at the middle and so forth. And so he describes those places which we can't see, but he knew where they were, and the Vanaras were capable of going there. Okay. Sugriva had asked Hanuman to assist Angada, leading the search party to the south. This was the direction where Ravana would most likely be found, as he had been seen flying that way with Sita. Now, the fact is, as was already mentioned, although Ravana was heading south, he could be anywhere, because the Rakshasas have the capacity of traveling into higher regions and lower regions, not just heading south. Now, if he was one of us, it's south means south. You don't have to look the other directions. But Rakshasas can be in other realms and move around without restriction. And most likely look south. Okay. Sugriva spoke with Hanuman just before he left. "There is nothing on earth and in the heavens that can obstruct your movement, O valiant son of the wind god. You are no less than your great father in prowess. There's no created being on earth equal to you in strength and vigor. On you rests my main hope of finding Sita." Ram heard Sugriva speaking with Hanuman in this way, and he saw his eager expression. It was clear he was confident of success, as much as Sugriva was sure that his minister would find Sita. Ram was overjoyed. The commentary says, Ram was assessing who is the suitable guru. The Lord empowers someone to be his representative guru. And he had, from the time their first meeting, he studied his speech, he studied his countenance, he studied his manners, he studied his qualities. He spoke about them all to Lakshman. He's studying, and the one that intimately knew him, when Sugriva just confirmed everything that he had understood. So he now is conferring to Hanuman the guru function. And these commentators speak again and again about Hanuman in that way. Not just he's the best of servants, but he's functioning as the guru representing Vishnu or Ramchandra. Okay, here we go. Take this token, O jewel among monkeys. It was his ring with his inscribed with his name, and show it to Sita. This will reassure her that I sent you. I feel sure you'll soon see the princess. Hanuman took the ring and touched it to his head. He prostrated himself at Ram's feet and prayed for his blessings. Then, looking like the full moon surrounded by a galaxy of stars, he left with his party. The Vanras and bears all left with great haste, shouting and howling, thundering and roaring, growling and shrieking. They ran in the four directions. The monkey chiefs cried out in different ways, I shall destroy Ravana and bring back Sita. Single-handed I shall kill that demon and rescue Janaka's daughter, even from the fires of hell. I will smash down trees, cleave great mountains, and churn up the oceans. I will certainly find the princess. I can leap across the sea a distance of 800 miles. I will soon bound Sumeru and enter the bowels of the earth until Sita is found. While boasting of their power in this way and other ways, the monkeys gradually disappeared. After the monkeys had left, Ram spoke to Sugriva. Here it is. I was surprised to hear your extensive descriptions of this earth. How do you know it so well? Sugriva replied that he had seen every part of the world while running away from Vali. My angry brother chased me in all directions, he said. As I dashed away in fear, I saw every part of the wide earth as if it were an impression of a calf's hoof. With Vali always behind me, I ran with tremendous speed. Finally, I remembered Matanga's curse and came to Rishamukh, whereupon Vali left me alone. Ram laughed to hear Sugriva. The two friends sat speaking together for some time. Then Sugriva left for Kishkinda to wait the return of the search parties. Okay. Wow. You two boys, how you doing? Is this okay? Should this continue? Okay. The adults are fine. We're just hearing Ram's pastimes. You're okay. 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 The monkeys dispatched by Sugriva began their search. They scanned cities, towns, and villages, scouring the woods and forests. They climbed mountains and dived into lakes and rivers. They explored deep caverns and entered holes in the earth, going as far as possible in the directions they were assigned. They scrupulously searched everywhere for Ravana and Sita. Even after searching for a month, however, they were not successful. One by one, the parties returned, fearful, to Sugriva. From the north came Satabali, disappointingly reporting his failure. Vinita returned from the east without success also. From the west came Sushena, again without having discovered Sita's whereabouts. In the south, Hanuman and Angada and their party had traveled a great distance. The month had almost passed, and still there were no signs of Sita. They reached the plains around the Vindhya mountains. It was a desolate region full of caves and thick forests, waterless and uninhabited. The whole area had been rendered a wilderness by the curse of a sage many years previous, who had been angered by his young son's death. Thousands of monkeys combed the entire terrain, penetrating more and more into the frightful area. Suddenly, they came upon a huge Rakshasa. The battle scene. Get ready. Seeing the demon who looked like a hill, the monkeys stood with their loins tightly girded, ready to fight. The demon saw the monkeys and bellowed out, Who are you? You are gone. Angada thought the demon to be Ravana. He became enraged and rushed straight towards the roaring Rakshasa, who raised his massive hand to strike the monkey. Angada leapt high and dodged his blow, swinging his powerful arms. As he flew, the Vanara hit the Rakshasa on the head with his outstretched palm. The blow was tremendous, and the demon vomited blood and fell to the ground. After examining the dead Rakshasa, they realized it was not Ravana. The monkeys continued their search. That was quick. The vast Vindhya range was filled with innumerable caves. The monkeys systematically entered each and every one. They climbed every mountain and scoured all woods and groves. Gradually, they moved further and further south. Not finding Ravana or Sita anywhere, they became more and more fatigued and disappointed. The month allotted by Sugriva had passed, and still they had no clue as to where Sita had been taken. One day, when they were exhausted and racked by thirst, they came upon the entrance of a huge cavern. They saw birds emerging from it with their wings dripping with water. The monkeys decided to enter the large cave. They formed a long 8-mile chain to avoid getting lost. Bats shrieked and birds flew past them. Occasionally, the growl of a lion and tiger were heard. As they went deeper into the cave, they saw ahead of them a bright light. They moved quickly toward the light and came upon a huge open area, brilliantly lit by thousands of shining golden trees. The trees were adorned with brightly colored flowers and leaves, and they bore fruits which shone like rubies and emeralds. The trees hemmed in large lotus ponds of clear water filled with golden fish. The monkeys saw palaces of gold and silver, set with cat's eye gems and covered with lattices of pearls. On all sides were spacious couches and seats studded with various kinds of gems. Mounds of gold and silver vessels lay here and there, as well as piles of colored jewels. There were collections of sandalwood and aloe wood carvings, as well as many first-class palanquins lying about. Piles of costly, ethereal textiles of indescribable beauty lay on the floor. Celestial food and drink of every kind was spread on gold tables, and there were dazzling heaps of gold everywhere. Ooh. The monkeys were stunned by the sight, and they stood looking all around, their mouths hanging open. Then they saw an ascetic lady clad in black deerskins sitting some distance from them. She shone with mystic power as she sat in meditation. Hanuman approached her and respectfully inquired who she was and in whose cave they now found themselves. The woman's name was Swayamprabha, and she explained that the cave and all its wonders had been created by Maya, the architect of the celestial demons. He had dwelt there for some time, being finally slain by Indra for the sake of an Apsara whom Indra himself had coveted. The Apsara had lived in the cave with Swayamprabha as her servant. She had now returned to heaven, leaving Swayamprabha to her meditations. The ascetic lady gazed at the monkeys. She could understand that they were Ram's servants. She had seen Ram in her meditations and understood his divine identity. She was pleased to have the opportunity to serve Ram by entertaining his servants. The yogini gave the monkeys delicious foods and drinks, which invigorated them. As they ate, they told her of their mission. When they had finished eating, the hermitess asked them to close their eyes, and she would take them out of the cave. The monkeys complied, and in a moment, they mysteriously found themselves again standing at the entrance to the cave. Swayamprabha told them to continue their search and then took her leave, disappearing back inside. The monkeys stood outside the cave, amazed but refreshed from their celestial meal. They carried on vigorously, searching, and soon reached the southern ocean. Realizing that they looked everywhere in the whole southern region without success, they fell prey to anxiety. It was now more than 6 weeks since they had left. The monkeys were fearing of Sugriva's anger when they returned, and they sat together discussing what to do. Angada spoke. The king will certainly have us all put to death upon our late return, unsuccessful in our mission. Therefore, I suggest that rather than return in shame, we sit here and fast until a life leaves our bodies. How can we go back and face execution in front of our near and dear ones? Some of the monkeys agreed, and others recommended they continue searching for some time before giving up. One of them suggested to re-enter Swayamprabha's cave and live there for the rest of their happy days. This met with approval from other monkeys, but Hanuman disagreed. I don't approve of this course of action, O Vanaras, he chided. Forgetting our master's cause and actually forming an enmity in abandoning him is not at all a wise move, nor will Ram and Lakshman tolerate it. Those princes will tear Maya's cave asunder in no time. Their arrows fall with the force of Indra's thunderbolt. All of us will be annihilated. Hanuman continued to speak, praising Sugriva's qualities. We need not fear the monkey king. He regards all his subjects with love, and will certainly not kill Angada, the son of his dear wife Tara. Nor will Sugriva be harsh towards you. We have all tried our best to find Sita, and should now return to Kishkinda, reporting to the king for further orders. Angada did not appreciate Hanuman's speech. Dissension, right? No good qualities are to be found in Sugriva. Indeed, that worthless monkey has taken to okay. Tara had become Sugriva's second wife. That's what he's saying. He locked up my father in a cave and usurped his kingdom. Although Ram rendered him a great favor, that ungrateful wretch soon forgot his debt to the prince of Ayodhya. What piety does he possess? He only instigated the search for Sita out of fear of Lakshman. Angada still burned from within from the killing of his father brought about by Sugriva. How could Sugriva ever be kind towards the son of his mortal enemy? Now, there would be more than sufficient excuse to punish Angada, who had failed in his mission and had committed treason by sowing dissension among the other monkeys. He was sure that Sugriva would either kill him outright or cast him into chains for the rest of his life. Angada determined to sit there on the beach and fast until death. He sank to the ground weeping, his mind confounded by grief and despair. With the exception of Hanuman, the other monkeys sat next to him, denouncing Sugriva and praising Vali. They all sat on kusha grass with their faces turned to the east, thinking of Sugriva's fury and Ram's prowess. They prepared for death. Next comes Sampati, right? As they sat there roaring in dismay, they suddenly saw an enormous bird come out of a mountain cave. The bird looked upon the line of monkeys appearing like a row of mountain peaks on the plateau beneath him. Realizing they were observing the Praya vow of fasting until death, he said to himself, surely this food has been ordained for me by providence. After a long time, I shall eat sumptuously, feasting upon this line of monkeys one by one as they fall dead from starvation. The bird dropped down and perched near the monkeys. Seeing him there, Angada turned to Hanuman and said, surely this is Yamaraj, come in person to punish us for failing to serve Ram's purpose. This bird reminds me of Jatayu, about whom we have heard from Sugriva. That glorious bird laid down his life for Ram in a fierce battle with Ravana. We shall now give up our lives in Ram's service. Alas, like that heroic vulture, we too have failed to save Sita. The great bird heard him speak. He called out to Angada, "Who is this who mentioned Jatayu? Where is that younger brother of mine? I have not seen him for so long. My heart trembles as I hear you speak of his death. How did he encounter the king of the Rakshasas, if you please? O monkey, pray tell me everything you know." So here's another retelling of the whole Ramayana within Ramayana. The, the bird then told them his name was Sampati. He lived high in the mountains, unable to fly because his wings had been burned by the sun. He had lost touch with his brother Jatayu for many years. Angada told the bird everything about himself and his companions. He narrated the story of how Jatayu had died protecting Sita. Now they were searching for the princess who had given up hope and had given up hope. Thus they sat there, fearing of Sugriva and Ram and awaiting only death. Sampati cried out in anguish, his eyes filled with tears, and he said to Angada, "Jatayu is dearer to me than life. Now he is killed by a Rakshasa, and I can do nothing to avenge him. O monkeys, I am old and worn out. What then can I do upon hearing this terrible news?" Sampati explained how a long time ago, Sampati, Jatayu's brother, a long time ago, he had flown with Jatayu to heaven. As we soared upwards, we perceived the earth with her numerous mountains as if she were covered with pebbles. Her rivers looked like so many threads. Great cities seemed like chariot wheels, and forests like grassy plots. Tears fell from the bird's eyes as he recounted how he had lost his brother. We had wanted to follow the sun as it coursed through the heavens. When we reached the track of that fiery globe, however, we became overpowered by its rays. Jatayu had grown weak from heat and exhaustion. I therefore covered him with my wings to protect him. We then fell back to earth, where we became separated. I fell onto the Vindhya mountains with my wings completely destroyed by the scorching rays of the sun. Angada looked at the wingless bird. He must know all the regions of the universe. Surely he knew where Ravana lived. Perhaps there was still hope. The Vanara asked Sampati, "Can you tell us where lies the abode of that vilest of all beings, Ravana?" Sampati slumped down in sorrow. By hearing Angada's question, he lifted his head and opened his eyes wide. "Although I am old and useless, bird, I can still render some service to Ram, if only by my speech. I do indeed know where Ravana lives. In fact, as I lay upon this mountain, some while back I saw him flying by, holding Sita. The princess was constantly crying out, 'O Ram! O Ram! Lakshman, help!'" The bird told Angada that Ravana dwelt in Lanka, which was situated in the midst of the southern ocean, 800 miles away. The princess was being held captive in Ravana's garden, guarded by fierce Rakshasas. Sampati possessed the ability to see Lanka. Even as he spoke to the monkeys, he said, "Although my wings are broken, my vision is not impaired. We vultures are capable of sighting objects at a great distance. Furthermore, by my intuition, I can understand that one of you will soon see Sita, and then you will return again to Ram's presence." Requested by Sampati, the monkeys took the bird to the seashore, where he offered water to the departed soul of his brother. He then told them more about himself. When he had first fallen to the Vindhya mountains, he had spoken with a rishi named Chandrama, who was living there. The bird had fallen at the sage's feet and related a sad tale. Weeping, Sampati said that he wished to throw himself from the mountain peak and end his life. The rishi restrained him, telling him that in the future some monkeys would arrive at that spot searching for Ram's divine consort. Although I am able to give you your wings back, I will not do so, as you are destined to render a service to Ram through those monkeys. You must remain here and tell them where to find Sita. At that time, your wings will again be restored. Sampati said, the rishi had then enlightened the bird with spiritual knowledge. He had told him that bodily suffering must be borne by everyone as a reaction to their own past deeds. One should nevertheless realize that the real self is different from the body. Without being overly attached to the body, one should try to fix the mind on the Supreme Lord, with whom all beings have an eternal relationship. Thus, Sampati should not lament for his broken body. He should live there patiently, thinking of Ram and waiting for his chance to render some service. Sampati concluded, that was 8,000 years ago, and I have survived here all this time, being brought food by my son. Now at last I have performed my service to Ram. Even as Sampati spoke, a beautiful pair of wings sprouted from his body. He rose at once to the air and called down to the monkeys, O Vanras, Chandrama Rishi told me you would succeed in your mission. Indeed, he said that the servants of Ram could easily cross the terrible ocean of birth and death. What then of this small sea? Take heart and go to the south. Cross the ocean, and you will find Lanka, where Sita is held. Farewell. Beautiful. The bird disappeared into the sky, leaving the monkeys to continue their search. They were overjoyed, abandoning all thoughts of fasting until death. They leaped into the air, racing down to the beach and roaring with glee. Then they saw the brilliant, billowing waves. How could they possibly cross the ocean? They did not possess the power of flight. The vast sea stretched into the distance, looking as insurmountable as the sky. Angada said, which among us can leap across this sea? Who shall become the deliverer of the monkeys today? If any of you can jump over the ocean and reach Lanka, speak out and remove our fears. The monkeys all remained silent, gazing with unblinking eyes at the roaring sea. Angada spoke again, trying to inspire them with confidence. I have no doubt any one of you is capable of this feat. As far as I am concerned, you can certainly leap 800 miles. No, as far as I am concerned, I can certainly leap 800 miles, but I do not know if I will be able to return safely. Angada looked around the party. Among them was Jambavan, a great leader of the bears, who replied, it is not right that you, O Prince Regent, should go on this expedition, although you could leap 1,000 or even 10,000 miles if you wished. One of us should go instead. Jambavan then said only he could cover 700 miles, having grown old. Each of the monkeys then stated how far he could leap. Some said 100, some 200, some 500, but none could leap the full distance and return again. Jambavan then spoke to Hanuman, who was sitting silently. Oh, valiant monkey, you have not told us of your strength. I know you to be possessed of tremendous ability. Right, Hanuman? Jambavan described Hanuman's birth and power. The monkey was begotten by Vayu, and soon after his birth, he had leaped into the sky for thousands of miles, wanting to catch the sun. At that time, he had been struck down by Indra. Hanuman's father, the wind god, became aggrieved at seeing his son killed, and he ceased to blow. All creatures, all created beings then began to suffocate due to the stoppage of air in the universe. The gods sought to appease Vayu by bringing Hanuman back to life. They had also blessed the monkey with many wonderful powers. On the strength of the gods' blessings, Hanuman had become fearless even as a young child. He had played in the hermitages of the rishis, mischievously throwing about their paraphernalia and stopping their sacrifices. To check him, the rishis had uttered an imprecation, like a curse. You will forget your power. Only when you hear your powers described by another will you again remember them. Jambavan concluded his narration about Hanuman. There was no doubt he could leap to Lanka. Why then was he sitting indifferently? He could not see the monkeys. Could he not see the monkeys plunge in despair? So by Jambavan speaking this way, he's reminding Hanuman of his powers. So now his powers are coming back. Hanuman stood up. Jambavan's speech had ended the rishi's curse. He remembered his great prowess and felt encouraged by Jambavan. With a great roar, he said, I shall jump across this mighty ocean. He then expanded his body to 50 times his normal height, stretching his arms and yawning, he spoke in a voice that resounded like thunder. I claim my descent from the mighty Vayu who circulates through all of space and easily smashes down mountain peaks. I could leap to the outer limits of the universe. I am quite able to overcome the blazing sun as it moves from the east to the western mountain. Today I shall leap from Mount Mahendra, scattering the clouds, shaking the mountains, and drying up the sea. I will swiftly and easily reach Lanka in one great bound. Have no fear. Hanuman roared again and again, filling the monkeys with joy. Jambavan replied, Our grief is now dispelled. We are depending on you, O gallant monkey. We shall stand on one foot in yogic meditation here upon the seashore, praying for your success until you return. Hanuman reassured the monkeys further. He asked them what he should do. Should he annihilate the entire Rakshasa horde and rescue Sita? Or should he single-handedly kill Ravana, uproot Lanka, and carry it, along with Sita, back to Ram? Final page. Almost done. Angada asked him to first locate Sita and then report back, for that was Sugriva's order. In consultation with Ram and Sugriva, they could then decide on their next course of action. Hanuman bowed to that instruction and bounded to Mount Mahendra a few miles away, its peak piercing the sky, the clouds in the sky. He ranged up the side of the mountain and stood on its summit. As he stood there roaring, gods and Siddhas assembled in the sky above him, uttering benedictory hymns. They dropped celestial flowers and beat their drums. The huge monkey folded his hands to the east. He offered his to the east because that's where the sun rises, because it's said that the person who taught him the scriptures was the sun god himself. So he's offering respect to his guru, the sun god. He concentrated his mind and gazed south toward Lanka. Hanuman felt honored to have such an opportunity to render Ram a service. From his first meeting with the prince, he knew Ram to be his eternal master. He felt Ram's ring bound in his cloth. Sita would be overjoyed to receive that token and know that Ram would soon arrive to rescue her. With a sense of elation, Hanuman contemplated approaching Ram with news of Sita. He squatted down and prepared to jump. Last paragraph. With a great cry, "Victory to Ram!" Hanuman sprang upwards with tremendous force, pressing the mountain deep into the earth. Animals rushed down the mountainside in all directions. The rishis engaged in meditation in the mountain forests were startled and rose into the air. Great serpents moving about on the side of the mountain became furious and bit the rocks, which then glowed red from the serpent's virulent poison. All the trees shook and shed their blossoms, and the whole mountain appeared covered with flowers. Large fissures appeared in the mountain, and different colored streams issued out. As Hanuman leaped upwards, Mount Mahendra presented a beautiful sight, and the monkeys gazed up in wonder and awe. Then they went down onto the beach to begin their wait for Hanuman's return. And that ends the Kishkinda Kanda, and tomorrow is Sundara Kanda. And Sundara Kanda is this section is the sorrow is now past. It's now, victory. It's a different mood. Very uplifting. Okay, it's because the reading took a long time. I'll just stop there and see if there's some discussions in the room, and then we'll go to online. We have a portable mic. Oh, there's the portable mic.
Krishna. I was wondering, why did Hanuman forget about his the
Powers?
Talents?
It's mentioned when he was a little boy, he was mischievous. And he went here and there amongst the ascetics who were doing their rituals, and he would take their paraphernalia and make a mess. He did monkey business. And they knew that there was a benediction that even the demigods could not bring curses. The Brahmins and demigods could not bring curses. So they just did this. He's going to forget his powers until sometime later when somebody reminds him. So because of that, he forgot. And Jambavan knew, so when Jambavan said, the curse was over.
So in today's
Hold it straight. There's a unidirectional mic there.
Okay. So in today's reading, you mentioned like Sugriva took Vali's
Chain.
chain, right?
Necklace, yeah.
So that chain, whatever he got, did it also have the power?
Same power.
Okay, so
Same power.
okay, but during the battle, it could have been very much.
Yeah, so he couldn't be defeated in battle,
Yeah.
and the power of others would be half go to him.
Yeah. Then Lord Ram should have utilized him, right, for in the war to get Sita. In the war, Lord Ram should have utilized Sugriva to fight with anybody else to defeat.
Oh, you want to know, did he give another assignment after taking care of the Ravana and the Rakshasas? That's a nice question. I don't know. He as far as I know, he went back to Kishkinda and ruled. No more battles.
Okay.
Not at least, not any known major battle we're aware of. That's your question?
No, I was
No.
asking like, as Sugriva had that prowess, right?
He
So
had this.
yeah, he could have fought with anybody else, and he would have won anyone. So he would be the victorious even
Yes,
without Rama
correct,
fighting.
correct.
So yeah, instead of Ram fighting,
Oh, so why didn't Sugriva do it instead of Ram?
yeah,
Because that's what Ram does. Vinashaya chaduskritam. That's what Vishnu does. He could have done it through Sugriva, but he did it himself. Just playful. Okay, something back there.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. A comment in the sense that Sugriva was running when Rama asked him, "How do you know all the four corners, everything that is on the planet Earth?" I was wondering, he was running away in fear from Bali, but still he observed so many things.
Sure.
That's what I wanted to like.
Well, he was observant. He wanted other places to hide and et cetera, et cetera. So he's looking very carefully more than just like a tourist or something.
Amazing personalities.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. In Ramayana, there's very deep. It's important as far as cosmology is concerned. There's descriptions of what he saw, the names of the places, and what he saw in those different places. So it's in the Itihasa, in the history itself, is some picture of cosmology. Although it's not a section over there about cosmology, it's just built within the narration itself.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Thank you, Guru
Yeah,
Maharaj.
that's better.
Wonderful reading and realizations. The one thing really stood out was that ingratitude, which was mentioned that
Several times.
And one is, of course, the ingratitude as stated here as a sin. The other thing is we see all the advanced devotees are very grateful for what they receive. The question is, so that's one of the reasons for practicing sadhakas who feel disconnected. One of the reasons is lack of gratitude? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's explicit as well as implicit, like one tries to do it explicit as
Yes. It's natural, so it's implicit, and it's cultivated. Both explicit and implicit. Back in the corner, all the way by the door.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I have two questions. One is more curiosity based, and the other is more application based. The curiosity question is, why did no one know exactly where Ravan lived, like where his home was? And
I mentioned. They didn't. Apparently, Tara knew, because Tara reported that Vali knew, but she didn't say where. Is that what you're pointing to? I mean, that occurred to me each time I read this. She knew that Vali knew, and how many soldiers, and so to know how many soldiers means where. Now, if they wanted to know, they just could have asked Tara, what did Vali say? Where does Ravana live? It was saved a lot of problems. But Vali, so there's a few things, would have spoiled the whole story of Ramayana, for one thing, and all the heroics of Hanuman finding Sita and crossing the ocean and all of that, and burning Lanka and the whole thing, and Vibhishan being insulted, and whole sections of the Ramayana just would have missed. So for Leela's sake. But in another sense, there are higher dimensions. This is a subtle topic, but space, the Vedic conception of time and space, it works differently for different beings. The Rakshasas had the powers to move to different places in different realms that humans don't have access to, just because they don't have the power. So where is he really? I mean, when you get into it, it's really, this is my experience, it gets really baffling. I'll just give one example, and there's many. In the descriptions of Govardhan Hill, when Govardhan descended from the spiritual realm to this Bhumandala realm, he descended to a place that's not in Bharat Varsha. It's not on the earthly globe. It's another place. It's one of the islands, the rings surrounding Jambudweep, the central. But the rishi that went there was able to go there and bring Govardhan back. So how does that work? Answer: it's mind-boggling. How do you move? How do personalities, yogis, or anybody move through different realms that you can't see with these eyes, but they exist? Or here's another one. When Madhvacharya went to get confirmation of his teachings from Vyasadeva, where did he go? He went to a place where other people can't go. And the detail that's described by the followers of Madhvacharya is that there are 7 levels of Badrinath, and he is in the upper realm, and Madhvacharya had the password. He was able to access that place, and others are not. We can't go there. We don't have the qualification to enter. So back to your question, where why how come they didn't know? Because they're different realms, and Rakshasas have the capacity to enter those realms, and they didn't really know. They wanted to there was 2 requests from Ram: find Sita, see if she's okay, and find out where Ravana is, because it's kind of part and parcel. Is she still alive? She's and where is Ravan reside? Report back.
So did the Vanaras have
Speak directly into the mic.
Did the Vanaras have that ability to also go into those more subtle realms? Is that why?
Apparently Hanuman did, but not all of them. They had powers, but not all those powers, apparently. Okay. Second, that was the curiosity question. The application one?
The application one is it's about destiny in regards to how we
Destiny.
perceive actions.
Speak. You have people online
Sorry.
that aren't able to hear you.
Sorry. The second question is more about destiny and how we perceive our actions and the actions that happen around us or that cause us to move towards certain paths. Reading these epics like Ramayana or Mahabharata, like that theme is there throughout,
Yes.
where it seems more like destiny is at play than it is individual actions making an impact.
We
in-
discussed this the other evening. When was that? Saturday evening. This very topic. And based upon that question and the kind of energy that question got, there was an idea that on Saturday evening coming, there's this little fly zooming around. On Saturday evening, we'll just have a dedicated topic because there are going to be some American friends that are going to come to, so explain in simple terms. But to repeat, did you hear the discussion Saturday evening?
I did not
Okay.
get a chance.
It goes, it's simple. Things that happen are karmic connected or destiny connected. How you respond to those things that happen is free will related. The example, if it's going to rain, it's going to rain. And then you can make some free will choices. You can carry an umbrella, you can stay indoors, you can go out and get wet, you can, you have a number of things you can choose to do. You can sit and feel frumpy and disgusted. You can celebrate, oh, it's very nice, it's going to be good for the agriculture. You can respond in different ways. Although the events that are coming, sad asad yoni janmasu, that's how we're going to approach it Saturday night. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 22. You can look it up later. Karnanam guna sangasya sad asad yoni janmasu. Karanam guna sangha, according to the gunas that one associates with, good fortune and ill fortune come. That's the destiny. We generate our good fortune, ill fortune. And it's not just karma, it's also guna. So we're not locked in to how we're going to respond, although how we're going to respond is certainly influenced by our past association with the modes. Some persons are tolerant, some persons are angry. Some persons are quiet, some persons are talkative. There's the variegated ways of responding can be quite conditioned. It doesn't take away free will. We can change that conditioning by associating with different modes by the free will choices we make. Just like doing what we're doing right now. Hearing the Ram Katha has an influence on the modes of nature that we're influenced by. Naturally, the sound vibration itself has an influence on how the modes of nature are impacting, and that's how we're going to choose to respond. So it's a blend of events that are destined to happen, and the other blend is how we respond to those events that are happening. And as we're responding, we're generating new karma. And thus, how we're responding is connected to the internal potency, and then it's karma-free.
So in regards to...
Okay?
Sorry, I just have one more follow-up question.
As long as you speak directly into the microphone, okay.
Okay. So my follow-up question is in regards to the pastimes themselves and how we see destiny play through. So is it the personality's own choices that are creating it, or is it that the pastimes already been kind of ordained and so they're just...
Well, the pastimes are ordained, but people are making free will choices, but those free will choices are being inspired by Supersoul, not by the modes of nature.
Okay. Thank you.
There's freedom, and the freedom being exercised in such a way that Ram should be pleased. And then the inspiration to respond this way or that way is super soul connected, or it's to be a participant in the Leela in such ways pleasing to Lord Ram.
Thank you very much. I always found that really interesting whenever the
You're
rishis could.
you're inaudible.
Sorry. I always found that really interesting whenever the rishis could predict what was going to come in the future, especially like when you were talking about Sampati.
Omniscience doesn't mean that free will is taken. They're not mutually exclusive.
Okay.
Okay, we have a question over here.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So in the case of
See, that's the right volume. Next time, a little louder. Go ahead. Show her how to do it.
so Sugriva, I mean, being, I guess, somewhat a learned personality, I mean, he recognized Rama's, uh, 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 I guess, a spiritual position, and he before the when he was in desperate condition, he took shelter of Lord Rama.
Yeah.
But after Sugriva became king, then he sort of seems to be have forgotten or being complacent, and kind of went on with his material things.
Yes.
And so it seems like it happens not only in Sugriva's case, but in a lot of our lives also. I mean, when we are desperate, I mean, we take shelter of the Lord, and then we become
Yeah.
complacent.
That's right.
So how do we protect ourselves from that kind of things?
Keep Hanuman by your side. Persons who are not prone to weaknesses or yielding to weaknesses, but persons who are prone to yielding to, striving for shelter. Keep such association. That's the best protection. That's going to be our topic next Sunday. Seeking sadhu sangha, striving for sadhu sangha, aspiring for sadhu sangha. That's the protection. Okay, we're ready for online. Oh, pardon me.
So another question I had, well, the first question I had, in when Rama was observing like the forest from the cave, like he was observing like the trees and all the animals.
Yeah.
So it said that the bees were intoxicated by the nectar. Does the word intoxicated like always mean like in a bad way?
No, in a good way. They were joyful.
Okay.
They were happy bees, happy birds, not in the negative way.
Okay.
First question from Madhav Das. Is there a disciplic succession emanating from Lord Ram, just like Lord Krishna has 4 sampradayas emanating from him?
No.
Next question from Sweta Dweep Prabhu. How do we understand the...
Look at, she's gotten much clearer. You got intimidated or trained up, one or the other. Go ahead. Good going. Good going. Much easier to hear you. It's much easier to hear you. Before I was straining. Now it's easy to hear you. Keep going.
Next question from
Sweta Dweep.
Sweta Dweep. How do we understand the sensuality of Sugriva even after becoming close associate and friend of Lord Rama?
It was similar to your question. That is, he's a fallible being. So sometimes fallible beings sink to, less than, high grade spirituality because of conditioning and their psychophysical nature. They yield to that psychophysical nature. And there's other explanations. He had been in a deprived condition for so long. When in touch with opulence, he was overwhelmed. His senses and mind were overwhelmed after having been deprived for so long. It was intoxicating in the wrong way, in the negative way. Pleasures, food, this and that, because he was used to like living as an ascetic for a long time. Now there's that opulence like anything, so he became overwhelmed. So you can say his bhakti was weak. When your bhakti is not weak, then you won't become overwhelmed. Next.
Second question from Swetadweep Prabhu. In today's reading, we heard about detailed description of various palaces and ornaments worn by different personalities. Are these descriptions present in Valmiki Ramayana?
As far as I know, yes. There's celestial in nature, and so that's the kind of description we find. Yeah. Next.
It's a comment from Shrida Das. The section of Sampati arriving in the scene when all the Vanaras are feeling down due to failure to find Sita and anxious of their fate from Sugriva makes me think how merciful is Lord to his devotees, that whenever they are troubled, either he comes directly or sends his representatives
Yes.
who bring positivity in the life.
Yes. Nice going. Nice going. By the way, he's in Singapore, some distance away. That's it?
Next question from Uttam Bhaktadas. Although gunas come from karma, but they are also influenced by the scriptures, Sangha, and the environment we live in, thus giving more freedom in response. Is that correct?
I was trying to catch the essence, but when you end a statement like that with saying that that's correct, I got to hear it again.
Although gunas come from
gunas come from
karma,
no, they don't. Gunas stand alone. Gunas, so the statement's right off the bat is not correct.
Next question from Amara Devi Dasi. While we were presenting topics of Lord's Leela, how to balance between practical lessons and the fact that these are Leelas. Because when one knows this is a Leela, the practical lessons get diluted a bit.
Because the practical lessons get what?
Diluted.
Diluted. They don't get diluted. When you try to apply them, they get diluted, or just hearing them, the lessons become diluted?
Because we kind of say that, oh, that's Leela. So the lesson is kind of, it's not as much as lesson. It's a Leela.
I'm looking at Sanchari because it's one of her categories of questions, the application category of questions. It's a consistent, how she processes when she hears things is how to apply it, which is good. Well, it doesn't get diluted if you understand embedded in the Leela, there's a practical lesson for little people like us. And we're not transcendental people, we're little people. But the Lord is with transcendental people, and they're engaging in the Lord's Leela with him, among other things, to teach us lessons. And so the lesson doesn't get diluted by thinking that it's Leela. One can understand the Lord wants to teach me something. And so let me be very attentive to understand how he's teaching me something. And then we'll go to Sanchari and ask her, how do we apply this teaching in practical ways? And if you think like that regularly, then it doesn't get diluted. You get the full force, the full effect. Okay? Very good. One more.
From Uttam Bhaktadas. Where do gunas come from?
Where do the gunas come from? They're intrinsic within material nature. We had this discussion, if you remember Uttam Bhakta, in one of the morning classes with Uddhava Gita, where the Avaduta Brahman was describing the process of creation in some detail. And when we were having that discussion, there's this term and that term and that and another, there's different language within Sanskrit that are describing aspects and features and stages of the creation of the universe. Like, for example, Prakriti, Pradhan, the Mahatattva, Guna, and so forth. There are different aspects. So the gunas are within Prakriti. Prakriti is moved by the gunas, so the gunas are Prakriti. You can say it either way. So it's intrinsic to material nature. There's modes of material nature. They're intrinsic within it. And when we associate with those modes, we are, using Prabhupada's language, we're infected. You could say affected. He likes the word infected by those modes. You infect the modes. You become influenced by the modes. And so it's intrinsic within material nature, the modes of material nature, modes of material nature. That's what the modes are. Three in number, mixed. Here we go, another question. Okay. We're ready for a good one. It's a good one? And we'll find out.
What are gunas?
What are?
What are gunas?
What are demons?
Gunas.
Gunas. Modes of nature. Here's a really nice explanation. You've seen a rope. Often, they make ropes where it's this strand and that strand, three strands kind of wound together to make a rope, to make it really tight. You can't break it so easily. Like a rope has three strands, so the modes have three categories. One is for creating things, mode of passion. Another is for destroying things, mode of ignorance. Another is for maintaining things, that's goodness. So material nature has those three modes: creation, destruction, and maintenance, or passion, ignorance, and goodness. And by those three modes, those three, creation, destruction, maintenance, everything this material world is being conducted by those three modes, or combination. And those three modes, like a rope, have one tied up tightly to material life. One, another, combination, changing, sometimes. Like, sometimes you can be gentle. Maybe sometimes you can be angry. Maybe sometimes you destroy things. Maybe sometimes you create something nice. Maybe sometimes you're just like very contented and peaceful. And so those are modes. Modes influence our mood, our happiness, our food, our intelligence, the modes influence every aspect of our material existence. And they're three in number, and they mix. making varieties. That's what the modes are. Guna, guna, and modes mean the same thing. Okay. One more. Two more. And that's it, because it's time to end.
Another question from Uttam Bhaktadas.
Okay.
Do gunas come from one's life to another life?
Yes. Tendency.
Next question from Manmatananda Das. We hear so little about the pastimes of Lord Shatrughna. Could you please speak a few pastimes?
Two. Shatrughna was known to be like Lakshman was to Ram, Shatrughna was to Bharat. So he had a trait, as each of the four brothers had their traits. Shatrughna's trait is loyalty to Shatrughna, loyalty to Bharata. And he liked being in the background. He liked serving from the background, not in up front and seen by everybody, noticed by everybody, and heard by everybody. He liked serving from the background. So that's like a personality trait, not a pastime. Perhaps the most celebrated pastime in Ramayana is his when Ram was back in Ayodhya and ruling in Ayodhya, there was a messenger that came from Madhupuri describing this terrible Rakshasa named Lavana Asura. And after hearing the description of Lavanasura and his powers, Ram looked at his brothers and said, who would like to take care of him? And Shatrughna, instead of being quiet, stepped forward, said, everyone else gets to do some service. Can I do some service? And so he was anointed to go and given a special deity and given this and that, and off he went. And Shatrughna, on his way, met Valmiki. And if I remember correctly, shortly after he left, the two boys were born. It may even have been when he was there. And then some number of years, something like, I forget the number of years, 9 years, 10 years, 11 years later, he came back. They're little boys. So he killed Lavana. He ruled there for some time, and he was feeling separation from Ram, so he returned. So if someone wants to hear this description, it's in Valmiki Ramayana. I'm sure it's in this Krishna Dharma Ramayana also. For sure, it's in Valmiki Ramayana. And when we go to Vrindavan, we'll visit the very temple where Shatrughna is the presiding deity. And it's in Madhuvan. And the whole story we narrated there. If you want to hear the whole story beginning to end, go to the Vrindavan Yatra series and click on the part that tells the story of, you can read it in Ramayana, or you can hear it being narrated there, Vrindavan Yatra in Madhuvan. It's the same place, Madhuvan is the same place where Dhruva's Tila is. Dhruva did his meditation. It's really a short distance away, the two places. Same forest. Anything more? No? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.